Have you ever been so mad about your favorite bakery being trashed that you wanted to start a war? Well, believe it or not, something kind of like that actually happened. Today, we're diving into one of the weirdest conflicts in history, the pastry war. Yeah, you heard me right, a war over pastries. Buckle up, because this story is a wild ride of political chaos, diplomatic drama, and, of course, delicious French baking. So, let's set the scene. It's the 1830s in Mexico. The country is brand new, having won its independence from Spain just a decade or so earlier. But winning didn't mean things were peaceful. The new republic was a mess. Political instability was the name of the game. Coups, rebellions, and civil unrest were as common as tacos. One day, you'd have one general in charge, and the next, another one would kick him out. It was a turbulent time, to say the least. Amidst this chaos, a lot of foreign nationals were living and working in Mexico, including a sizable French community. They were merchants, artisans, and chefs, trying to make a living. One of these Frenchmen was a pastry chef named Monsieur Ramontel. He had a lovely little shop in Tacubaya, a district of Mexico City. He was known for his delicious cakes, croissants, and all sorts of sweet treats. He was just a guy trying to bake his way to a better life. But in 1828, during yet another one of those political upheavals, a group of rowdy Mexican army officers, supposedly drunk and disorderly, decided to help themselves to Monsieur Ramontel's shop. They didn't just steal a few eclairs. They allegedly ransacked the place, ate everything in sight, broke furniture, and caused a huge amount of damage. Monsieur Ramontel was, understandably, furious. His livelihood was destroyed. Now, in a stable country, you'd go to the police, file a report, and expect the government to sort it out. But this was 1830s Mexico. The government was broke and barely functioning. Ramontel's pleas for compensation fell on deaf ears. He complained to the local authorities, but they did nothing. So, what's a frustrated French pastry chef to do? He went bigger. He went all the way to the French government. Monsieur Ramontel wasn't alone. Many other French citizens in Mexico had also suffered losses during the constant unrest. Their businesses were looted, their property destroyed, and they weren't getting any help from the Mexican government. The French ambassador in Mexico had been collecting these complaints for years, but nothing ever came of it. This is where things escalate from a local dispute to an international incident. The French government, under King Louis Philippe, saw an opportunity. France was looking to expand its influence in trade in Latin America. They felt that Mexico wasn't respecting its international obligations and saw the complaints from its citizens as the perfect excuse to flex its muscles. So, France compiled all the complaints, including Monsieur Ramontel's pastry predicament, and sent a demand to the Mexican government. The demand was for a staggering 600,000 pesos in damages. To put that in perspective, a laborer's daily wage was about 1 peso. This was an astronomical sum of money for the nearly bankrupt Mexican government. Monsieur Ramontel's claim for his ruined pastry shop was reportedly 60,000 pesos alone, which is how his story became the symbol of the whole conflict. The Mexican press, with a great sense of humor, latched onto this, and nicknamed the whole affair the Guerra de los Pasteles, or the Pastry War. It was a catchy, slightly ridiculous name that perfectly captured the absurdity of the situation. A war over cakes. It sounded like a joke, but the French were not joking. The Mexican government, feeling the demand was outrageous and unfair, refused to pay. They argued that their own citizens had also suffered during the turmoil and weren't being compensated, so why should foreigners get special treatment? It was a standoff. France decided it was time to stop talking and start shooting. In 1838, a French fleet under Admiral Charles Baudin sailed into the Gulf of Mexico. They issued an ultimatum: pay up or else. Mexico stood its ground. So, the French Navy blockaded Mexico's main ports on the Atlantic coast, including the crucial port of Veracruz. This blockade was a huge deal. It crippled Mexico's economy. All the trade, the imports and exports, came to a grinding halt. The French then went a step further. They bombarded and captured the fortress of San Juan de Ulua, which was supposed to be an impenetrable defense for Veracruz. The message was clear. France meant business. The Mexican government, now in a full-blown crisis, declared war on France. The fighting wasn't a massive all-out land war, but it was serious. There were skirmishes, battles, and a lot of tension. And in a strange twist of fate, this conflict brought a very famous, or infamous, figure back into the spotlight: Antonio López de Santa Anna. Yes, that's Santa Anna, the guy from the Alamo. At the time, he was living in political exile on his ranch. But when his country was attacked, he saw his chance to be a hero again. He rushed to Veracruz to lead the defense. During one of the battles against the French, Santa Anna was severely wounded by cannon fire. His leg was so badly injured that it had to be amputated, and in a move that only Santa Anna could pull off, he later had his amputated leg buried with full military honors. It had its own parade and a fancy tomb. He turned his personal loss into a symbol of national sacrifice, which, believe it or not, made him incredibly popular again and helped him return to power. So, in a way, the pastry war gave Santa Anna his leg up, or, rather, took it away and put him back on top of Mexican politics. The war dragged on for several months. Mexico's economy was in shambles from the blockade, and France was starting to feel the pressure from other world powers, particularly Great Britain. The British weren't happy about France disrupting trade in the region. They relied on access to Latin American markets, and the French blockade was bad for business. So, Britain stepped in to mediate. They helped broker a peace deal. In March 1839, the pastry war officially ended. Under the terms of the treaty, Mexico finally agreed to pay the 600,000 pesos demanded by France. The French, in turn, withdrew their fleet and ended the blockade. So, France won, right? They got their money. Monsieur Remontel and the other French citizens presumably got their compensation. But the whole episode left a bitter taste in everyone's mouth, and not from burnt pastries. It humiliated Mexico and highlighted its weakness on the world stage. It also showed how European powers could use gunboat diplomacy, using military threats to force smaller nations to do their bidding. For France, it was a short-term victory, but it damaged their long-term relationship with Mexico. This wasn't the last time France would interfere in Mexico either. Just a couple of decades later, they would be back, leading to a much larger and bloodier conflict. And what about Monsieur Remontel, the pastry chef who started it all? His story became a legend, a symbol of how a seemingly small injustice can spiral into a major international crisis when politics, pride, and money get involved. It's a powerful reminder that history is often stranger, and sometimes funnier, than fiction. A war started over pastries sounds absurd, but it was a very real conflict with very real consequences, including a lost leg for a future president and a humiliated nation. So the next time you're enjoying a croissant, spare a thought for Monsieur Remontel and the bizarre, cake-fueled conflict that is the pastry war. It just goes to show you should never, ever mess with a French chef's bakery. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you found this slice of history as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more weird and wonderful stories from the past. Let me know in the comments what other strange historical events you'd like me to cover. See you next time.